Welcome to the Death Row and Executions channel. My name is Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover recent crimes and convictions. There will be a link for that as well. This has been a very busy year for executions, hasn't it? There are now 2 executions scheduled for June 10th. One is Gregory Hunt in Alabama. I did a presentation on that case that appeared on this channel last week. The other execution on June 10 is for death row inmate Anthon Wainwright in Florida, the case that I'll be discussing today. In 1994, there were 2 men serving time at the Carteret Correctional Center in the town of Newport, here in my adopted home state of North Carolina. Anthon Wainwright was serving a 10-year sentence for burglary, and Richard Hamilton was serving a 25-year sentence for armed robbery. The photos you see here were taken much more recently. Of course, they looked a lot younger in 1994. At the time, Anthon Wainwright was 23 years old and Richard Hamilton was 31 years old. Carteret Correctional Center was considered a minimum security prison. And on April 24 of that year, 1994, both men escaped. While on the run, they stole a Cadillac and also burglarized a home where they managed to steal 2 rifles. Wainwright and Hamilton then drove the Cadillac to Florida. 3 days later, on April 27, 1994, Wainwright and Hamilton found themselves in Lake City, Florida, and decided to ditch the Cadillac and get another car. One report stated that the Cadillac was overheating, while others theorized that the men just didn't want to get caught in it because they were still in a stolen car out of North Carolina that was probably being looked for. Meanwhile, earlier that morning, 23-year-old Carmen Gayheart, a mother of 2 young children, and a nursing student, was attending a nursing class at Lake City Community College. After her class ended, she was on her way to pick up her 2 children from the daycare center, but made a stop at a Winn Dixie supermarket to shop for some groceries. That Winn Dixie store was just a block or 2 away from the daycare center. While loading groceries into her Ford Bronco in the parking lot, she was approached by 2 men, Anthon Wainwright and Richard Hamilton, with one of them pointing a rifle at her. Carmen was then forced to drive 15 miles into a rural area of Hamilton County, Florida, just west of the city of Jacksonville, by one of the men, while the other followed them in the Cadillac. Once there, she was brutally, indecently violated in the back seat of the Bronco by both men. Biological DNA evidence later recovered, and confessions would later provide proof of that assault. Carmen was then robbed, strangled, and shot with the .22 caliber rifle. Now, with regard to who did the strangling and who did the shooting, while there were times that both men were pointing the finger at the other about that, the state doesn't care. Nobody cares. Carmen's body was left with all her groceries out there in the woods. The 2 men later ditched the Cadillac and drove Carmen's Ford Bronco to Mississippi. When the daycare center notified Carmen's family that she never picked up her children, Carmen's husband, family, and friends all knew that something was terribly wrong. Beginning that day, hundreds of volunteers had searched for Carmen and her Ford Bronco. While in Mississippi, a state trooper, who would later also testify at the trial for both men, stated that he was on routine patrol when he spotted a Bronco with Florida license plates and began following the car. With no reason to stop it, but he had an uneasy feeling about it, he had said. As we would later learn, Anthon Wainwright was driving the car and Richard Hamilton was sitting in the passenger seat with the rifle. They realized that they were being followed by a state trooper, and Hamilton began shooting at the trooper. Additional troopers and police became involved, and when the shootout was all over, both Anthon Wainwright and Richard Hamilton were severely injured, but not dead. According to reports, Wainwright was in a lot worse condition. They were arrested and taken to a hospital for treatment. Investigators from Florida arrived in Mississippi and questioned both men, and they both confessed to everything they had done, with the exception of each one saying that it was the other who did the assault and killing of Carmen Gayheart. Hamilton had even offered an additional detail. He would later say that on their way from North Carolina to Florida in the Cadillac, Wainwright had him wait in the car while he met with some black drug dealers. According to Hamilton, Wainwright shot and killed them and took their drugs and money. Hamilton had also created a rough sketch of where Carmen's body can be found in the woods in Hamilton County near the town of Jasper. Investigators found Carmen Gayhart's body on May 2nd, 5 days after she was killed. The Cadillac that they had stolen in North Carolina was also recovered. According to at least one report, Anthon Wainwright had also told investigators that he had AIDS, and that when he indecently assaulted Carmen, he didn't care if she gets it. However, I haven't seen any follow-ups on that claim that he had AIDS, so I'm not sure if he was just making up a story. He's still alive after making that confession 30 years ago, so it doesn't seem likely that he has AIDS. Both men were eventually extradited back to Florida, and both went on trial together in 1995. And there were 2 separate juries for that trial, one jury for each man. I'm not sure how that works with 2 separate juries in one trial. Maybe someone familiar with the judicial system can offer a simple explanation in the comments of why that happens. Anyway, both juries found both men guilty, and during the sentencing phase of the trial, both juries recommended the death penalty, and both men were sentenced to death. As I said before, Anthon Wainwright, who is now 54 years old, is set to be executed on June 10th of this year. Richard Hamilton, however, will not be executed because he was found dead in his jail cell while still on death row about 2 years ago in 2023 at the age of 59. He would have turned 60 a month later. For some reason, the state of Florida has refused to release Hamilton's cause of death. Maybe he was the one who had AIDS. I'm kind of suspicious since Florida won't disclose the cause of death. Anyway, Hamilton had spent 28 years on death row awaiting execution. According to the family, during trial, it was Richard Hamilton who had turned to face them and blow kisses, including at Carmen's now widowed husband, several times during the trial. By June 10th of this year, when and if Anthon Wainwright is executed, he will have been on death row 30 years. Carmen Gayheart had lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, most of her life and began her nursing studies there. And that same year that she was killed, 1994, she and her husband had decided to move to Lake City, Florida, while searching for a safer, quieter community to live in. According to Carmen Gayhart's family, unfortunately, her father passed away in 2013 while still awaiting justice. In an interview with Carmen's sister, Maria Tortora, Maria had stated she was the sweetest girl on the face of the earth. Carmen's mother, Joanne Tortora, has survived, and in an interview several years ago, when Richard Hamilton was still alive, she let it be known that she is looking forward to their executions.
I have friends who say, you can't move on with your life until you forgive them. And it just not going to happen. I can't find it in my heart. I feel it's betrayal to my daughter. No, they deserve everything they get and more.
Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more death row and upcoming execution stories so that you're alerted when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye for now.